and welcome to the show. Very few airlines can boast about coming back from the brink. And one airline that has done that is, of course, SpiceJet. And I'm here with the man of the moment, Ajay Singh, CMD SpiceJet. Thank you so much for talking to us today, sir. Let me start by asking you, 2015 was anything but easy, right? You came in, you infused 800 crores for a little above 58%, which at that point in time in the stock market was a little over 600 crores. In 12 months today, that percentage is up over 2,400 crores almost. How did the turnaround of SpiceJet take place?
Well, as you know, in December of 2014, when we started this journey, SpiceJet had actually shut down. Flights had been cancelled, planes had been repossessed. A very large number of planes had been repossessed by the lessors, and employees had pretty much were on the verge of being told not to return to work. So we started with a great deal of trouble all around, and complete lack of confidence in the brand and in the airline. You had lessors saying give back my planes, you had creditors saying give back my money, government chasing for their dues, airport dues, oil dues, flights cancelled, no bookings happening, and so on. So I think the first thing for us to do was to try and infuse some confidence, to give a message that the airline was here to stay, and that we will, airlines operate on forward bookings. People come and book tickets, but why will anybody book a ticket if they feel that the airline is not going to be there tomorrow? Right?
So it was a tough situation. Nobody booking, but you need the money coming in almost every day.
Exactly. So I think the first thing was to try and infuse some confidence in our customers, to say that look, there is a good chance that we will revive this airline, and then to tell our other stakeholders. There are people who sell tickets, agents, online travel agents, and so on. All those guys need to know that there is a possibility that they will not that they will recover their money and that they will not lose business. So I think that was the first piece. I think I was also fortunate that people trusted me and thought that with me there was a chance that SpiceJet would come back from the brink.
Was there a reach out from the government to build that confidence up initially? Reach out to maybe creditors, say, you know what, I think this airline, did that sort of a reach out happen?
It wasn't their role to reach out to creditors, but I think in all their pronouncements, they said that they would like to see the airline survive, and that in itself was a great deal of support. It infused confidence in the system to say that look, here is somebody who's credible and who's trying to revive the airline, and the government is standing by to help wherever they can. Theoretically, wherever they can actually help the
Definitely
situation.
A poster moment for turnaround in the aviation sector that we've never seen, both from the government side and of course you as a promoter coming in and turning it around as well. Let's talk about a little bit of specifics and on-time performance. It was 40%. I think now you're above, almost touching 90. There's been a big turnaround. Market share again is such a huge thing that you've been able to turn on in just 12 months. Share a little bit of those statistics with us.
We were at 40%, like you said, in December. So we put a lot of effort to see that, the flights become much more reliable. So for that, you need to make sure that the equipment, the aircraft themselves are in much better shape. They hadn't been maintained for a long, they hadn't been maintained as well as they should have for a long periods of time. Some of the fleet was actually on the ground. Because of that, they had no spare capacity at all. So, you need to get the whole system to crank again. You need to get the mindset back. Actually, what happens is that when airlines don't do well, demoralization sets in. And this whole, thought of creating excellence and doing things right and trying to please the customer, that takes backseat. So it was important to get pride back in SpiceJet, to say that, look, this was a great airline and this will be a great airline again, and everybody should contribute towards that.
So I'm curious about this, and I want to ask you anecdotally as well. What made you come back to the sector, come back to SpiceJet? It's a tough sector. Aviation's a tough sector. Easiest way for a billionaire to become a millionaire, open an airline, all of those. You've been there, done that, and then you came back at a time which nobody would want to be in your position. It's not an enviable position to come to. What made,
I think on the contrary, it was a great position to come back to.
Okay.
Firstly, the fact that there is tremendous potential in Indian aviation, for the reason that such few Indians fly today. It's,
Okay.
under 2% of people that are actually flying in India. So fantastic potential for growth in the sector. The fact is that there is a model which potentially makes money. That model had sort of lost its way,
Right.
and I thought that there were plenty of mistakes which had been made, which could be corrected reasonably in a reasonably short period of time,
Okay.
and therefore the turnaround could happen pretty quickly. So oil prices were coming down as
Right.
well. There was a supportive government. I think the whole package seemed to make sense as far as I was concerned, and obviously there was an emotional connect.
Right.
It was a brand that I had helped create, and therefore to see it die painfully would have been really terrible.
Right.
And I thought that I would have the opportunity by doing this to revisit some of the mistakes that had been made, not only by the outgoing management and
Right.
ownership,
Right.
but also some of the mistakes that we had made
Right.
in our first term at SpiceJet.
Right.
So with the benefit of that experience, not too many people get a second chance or a second opportunity to address some of the mistakes that
Right.
they've made.
Let's talk a little bit about cutting costs. That's a major part of running the airline, keeping it well reined in. I believe fleet utilization is something that you're looking at very, very closely, changing Bombardier to a larger planes for Boeing. Tell us a little bit about that.
See, it's the whole package. You need to obviously work on the revenue pieces to try and ensure that your revenues are going to improve over a period of time.
Right.
And remember that in this year, oil prices came down.
Absolutely.
So when oil prices come down, fares come down.
Right.
And fares have come down. So we needed to ensure that actually, as fares came down, the revenue remained consistent. And in fact grew.
So more people are flying because prices are down.
Of course, so more people will fly. But so one thing that we did consciously was to try and see that our load factors, occupancy factors went up. So from the levels of 72%, they averaged 92% over the last 7 months. And that's ensured that our top line has remained consistent. We've also worked very hard on ancillary revenue, other pieces of, on the revenue side. In terms of the cost side, of course, you need to start to rationalize cost and bring them, because this is a constant effort to reduce cost in a low-cost airline. Now, there were some costs which are sticky costs, aircraft acquisition costs and engineering costs and so on and so forth. And those are costs that take longer typically to address.
Right.
But there are some that you can address pretty quickly. In terms of consolidating the network, in terms of ensuring that you're not flying to very many destinations, but flying to fewer destinations with greater frequencies. You can look at some of the contracts which can be quickly addressed. You can look at the sales costs and various little elements. So we worked on those pieces, and those have been done pretty effectively. And the bigger pieces, like you said, in terms of the fleet, in terms of orders, in terms of trying to reduce the cost of acquisition of aircraft, reduce the maintenance and engineering costs. That is something that we are working on now, and we hope to address in the next couple of quarters.
It's interesting what is happening with SpiceJet at this point in time in terms of fleet, right? So you had Bombardier, of course, and then Boeing. Now I believe that you're going to place an order with Airbus as well. Is it going to be an all Airbus fleet? Are you going to move there? Is it going to be an all Boeing fleet? How are you viewing that?
No, it will be a single aircraft fleet to the extent in terms of the large, single aisle planes, the jets. There will be a single aircraft. That will be either the Boeing or the Airbus. And we are talking to both the manufacturers. It's incredibly important for us that we do the right transaction at this time, because this is a transaction that will live with SpiceJet for the next 10 to 15 years.
Of course, right. And make all the difference as well.
And therefore, it's important that we do it right. So we are talking to both the manufacturers.
Have you made up your mind yet? Is it going to be
not as yet. We are talking, as I said, to both people, and we are looking to do the best commercial deal that we possibly can.
Is there a big order that SpiceJet is going to place very soon?
Oh, of course, we will place a large order, and we would like to place it soon. But we need to place the right order and on the right terms.
Okay.
And we are talking to both of them to ensure that can happen.
Airbus has, just increased its prices recently as well. Is that a factor at all into consideration?
I don't think so. Ultimately, it has to be at a commercial value which makes sense for the airline.
It's a long-term thing that you're looking at.
Of course, and we need to look at how we compete with others in the space. And how we actually really create a large global airline and brand effectively. Right. And for that, we'll try and do the best deal that we can.
So let's talk a little bit about funds. The last time the board met, 5,000 crores is what SpiceJet were looking to raise. What is the status of that, and is that money really what is also going to go towards a large order that we're going to expect very soon?
You know that 5,000 crores is an enabling resolution.
Okay.
It is something that has been carried on for some time, where the shareholders approve the ability of the company to raise the money should it be required.
Right.
That's not to say that the money is being raised immediately.
Sure.
As I've said to you before, we at SpiceJet, in terms of operations, we are very self-sufficient at this point of time. We don't need to raise money. Now, in terms of placing aircraft orders, we feel that there is significant internal generation which can fund the aircraft orders.
You won't need...
So we don't really particularly need to raise any money. If we do, there are plenty of options available, and that will include promoter contributions. It will include debt. It will include an equity raise. Though I must say that the equity raise at this time is probably the last priority.
Okay.
So
equity would be the last one.
Would be the last one.
Okay.
So at this time, we don't think we particularly need to sell strategic stakes, raise equity, and so on. But having said that, we'll see how the situation pans out.
If you're looking at something like, and I'm saying this, if you're looking at something like placing 100 aircraft orders, say, in the next month, if SpiceJet is looking at that, how are you looking to fund it?
No, as I said, we have enough resources internally.
Okay.
We have enough by way of limits and ability to debt fund a part of that, or supplier fund a part of that.
But it's not going to be an equity raise?
At this time, it doesn't appear likely that there will be an equity raise.
Equity raise on it. Let's talk a little bit about the debt bit. And I know that's been a debt overhang is something that's been difficult. 12 months, of course, is too short a time for everything to turn around immediately. AAI, now and then, it's a struggle. Can you tell us what the debt situation there is?
It's actually been quite comfortable, to be honest. We started with liabilities of about 2,200 crores. That's been knocked down to about 800 crores in this period. In terms of, and actually, there are a lot of settlements which have taken place between us and the vendors. And the ones that remain, we continue to talk to them, and we will find solutions, we hope, over the period of the next few quarters. In terms of airport authority, actually there is really no issue with them at all.
It's a comfortable situation?
Very comfortable. We had agreed with them right at the outset that we will pay them on an ongoing basis. We will pay them whatever is owed to them on a daily basis, plus we will pay them something extra to start to reduce the monies that were owed to Airport Authority of India. The monies that were owed to Airport Authority of India, I think, were in excess of 200 crores when we started. That number is now down to probably around 80 or 90 crores. So a lot of it has been paid, and on a daily basis, as agreed with the Airport Authority.
Bit by bit is being...
It's being paid.
Could you share with us any timeline where you feel that the entire debt would would be done away with?
I think it should all be done in the next few months.
Next few months, in the next quarter or so, probably.
Oh, you mean the entire piece?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely through the course of this year. It should
be done. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about when we speak and people who follow SpiceJet really closely. Everybody is looking at that time when maybe you're going to look at another buyer coming in. Maybe it's going to be a more board-driven than a promoter-driven airline. When you look at experts and you talk about that, that's what most people are talking about. You've been in talks with people off and on. We've seen that. You are in a comfortable position at this point in time. It's a stable airline now. When can we see a rejig happening?
We'll see. We are not very, stressed about that at this time. Obviously, when an airline does well, a lot of people come and talk to that airline and express interest. So this includes investors, financial investors, institutional investors, strategic investors, airlines, and so on. So we want to keep the doors open. We will continue to talk to everybody. At this time, we feel that is not the opportune time to start to sell equity stakes or strategic stakes. We'll take a call. Obviously the idea is to strengthen SpiceJet further to ensure that shareholders will benefit as a result of that strengthening. So we will take whatever we feel is the best decision in the interest of the company.
Is it likely to be, and I'm not of course talking about a timeline here that you've made very clear that currently you're not looking at, but is it likely to be more of a strategic stake with an airline, or you're open to
I'm not looking at strategic stakes at this time. I think it's this is the time to strengthen SpiceJet itself, and we have the ability to do it. The external environment is benign. We have a good brand and a good opportunity. So let us first strengthen ourselves, and then once we are in a certain position, we will look at what options present themselves.
Everybody is looking at that stock price as well, strengthening in fact from what to what that we've seen in the last 1 year go up. Let's talk a little bit on the macro environment at this point in time. The one sector that's actually doing well is aviation today, and that is because crude has fallen to such levels. It's going to be going lower. That's what everybody is predicting. Tell us a little bit about how that dynamics is playing out and how SpiceJet is making the most of it.
I think, as I said to you, the number of people that travel by air in India is incredibly small. And it is a very price sensitive sort of a market. So as soon as you start to stimulate with lower fares, you will see that the market will grow. And this is what happened in telecom, and this is exactly what is repeating itself in aviation.
So a demand, direct correlation to the prices falling down.
Direct correlation. It's flying is an aspirational good. And just as people wanted to move from two-wheelers to Marutis, people really do want to move from trains to planes. But they should be able to afford to do it. So as fares come down, more and more people will start to fly. Today, India is the fastest growing aviation market in the world. It's growing at 20%. But despite that growth, a very, very minuscule number of Indians are flying. So as we make it cheaper for them to fly, many more will fly. As we create more infrastructure in terms of airports, regional airports, and so on and so forth, you will see that a great deal of growth will come in the sector.
In the sector. Are you also preparing for the times that maybe when crude bounces back?
No, absolutely. I think it would be, unwise to not prepare for that eventuality. And I think it would be too much to expect, even though indications are that
it's going to get better in terms of lower.
That it's going to at least remain where it is for a period of time. The prices are going to remain benign, but we must plan for a time when they are higher than where
they are at this point in time. The 520 rule, and I cannot let go of you without asking you on that. Everybody is waiting for the aviation policy. It should have been in place quite a while ago. There's been a lot of back and forth, route dispersal guidelines, etc. Let's talk a little bit on the policy front at this point in time. If you could cover for us in terms of how are you looking at the 520 rule and also the route dispersal guidelines that the government is looking at?
I think firstly the policy is much greater than the 520 rule or the route dispersal guidelines. It has very many positive features in terms of the accent on regional connectivity, the great deal of emphasis it gives to setting up maintenance hubs within India. So great deal of positive ability in that policy.
Right.
I think in terms of the 520, you can't see 520 in isolation. I think we need to see this in terms of the substantial ownership and effective control guidelines.
Okay.
Now these are rules which are zealously guarded and protected and followed by countries around the world, and this includes liberal economies like America, like Canada, like Europe,
right.
And they all follow these rules. They use these rules strategically on a reciprocal basis,
sure.
To ensure that their airlines will become stronger.
Right.
So I think what we've done in India is that while we've relaxed ownership to 49%, and mind you, the US and Canada and other countries are actually at 25% voting right today.
Right.
We've relaxed it to 49%, but more importantly, we've done nothing to ensure that there is effective control. This is something that is protected by every country around the world. And because India has not done it, we have a situation where theoretically it's possible for airlines to come and set up shop, foreign airlines to come and set up shop in India, effectively own and control them, bid for Indian bilaterals, the rights that India has, to go abroad, and there could be a situation where airlines can actually fly in using the right from their countries and fly out of India using the rights that India has, and thereby create monopolies on certain routes, which would not be in the interest of the country. Now 520 is something that, because we are not being able to enforce effective control, which we should be doing,
this was
520 is something which temporarily protects the sector, and it also has the added benefit that airlines that want to fly overseas are forced to serve in the country as the incumbent airlines have already done before they can fly overseas. So this is something which benefits the country. So we would think that the government should look at the whole policy in a much more comprehensive manner and see that the policy promotes the development of Indian airlines which can become global players rather than global players coming in and taking over certain routes and markets. And
just one last question: low cost flying, low cost carriers have been the game changer really for the Indian aviation sector. You've been around for so long in that space. How has that space evolved? Do you think we are now seeing ancillary playing a good part in terms of revenue as well? Is it time for a shakeout in the sector, more consolidation? What is your vision for the space?
I think the future belongs to low-cost aviation. We believe that when we started SpiceJet and low-cost was such a small part of the market, I think we've been vindicated by the fact that today 70-75% of the Indian space is low cost. I think it makes sense in a market which is as price sensitive as India to look for models that will reduce cost and thereby reduce fares and stimulate the market. So that's what low cost flying does. In terms of ancillary revenue, that has always been an integral part of the model, and there will continue to be focus on improving that revenue and bringing down fares on the other side to ensure that there is greater stimulation and greater growth.
Great. Thank you so much for making time for us today and speaking to us. SpiceJet, the poster child of turnaround for 2015, and we wish you all the best for this year as well.
Thank you so much.